professor at NYU, and she's a country director for CGIR, which is the UN-affiliated International Center for Tropical Agriculture, where she leads corporate engagement and sustainable business model development across Latin America, with a strong focus on the Amazon basin. Since 2024, she's also part of CGIR, that's the acronym for the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, its impact hub for sustainable finance, supporting agri-food companies and financial sectors in integrating biodiversity, circular economy, and deforestation-free value chains. Very important. And then next we have Dr. Marcy Washington. Professor Washington is Associate Teaching Professor and Director of Undergraduate Studies in the Department of Politics and International Relations at FIU. She received her PhD from Florida State University. Nova.
Actually, Nova. Yeah.
Nova, I thought so, but somehow I got it wrong.
Go through all that.
In conflict analysis, yeah, so that's very important. Dr. Washington's research interests, very quickly, are assist in delivering an understanding that refugees, the diaspora, and internally displaced persons are also challengers who have the capacity in certain political and social environments to organize unrest, but also at the same time promote peace. That's beautifully said. She knows a lot about a lot of things. Let's just leave it at that. And then last but certainly not least, we have William Osceola, the secretary of the local Miccosukee tribe. Popeye William Osceola, as he's known, is a member of the Bird Clan, and he taught language, culture, and digital arts at the Miccosukee Indian School before he was elected secretary of the Miccosukee Business Council in 2021. Recently re-elected to a second term, he is in his mid-30s and is somehow still the council's youngest member, balancing tradition and modernity with a creative flair. As a secretary of the tribe, he's in charge of all aspects of communication within the tribe, including record keeping, correspondence, publishing notice about meetings and events, and keeping track of tribal membership. Some of his goals include shaping future leaders by placing an emphasis on education, increasing community involvement, and investing in infrastructure to improve roads, sidewalks, and important buildings within the reservation. He was born in Florida and raised in different camps inside the reservation. When he was 5 years old, his family moved to Connecticut, and living there for 7 years gave him an in-depth perspective on the outside world and increased his appreciation for his tribal community. Being an enthusiastic proponent of history, he loves sharing with others what he's learned about humanity's collective past, as well as the tribes, and I hope we can learn some of that from you today. Thank you very much all for being here, and I would say the floor is yours now, Dr. Ivanova.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcus. Actually, I have 2 masters in economics and international relations, but I guess for FIU, 2 masters is equal to 1 PhD. Okay. We are the positive panel here, and I was asked to present with different perspectives, different actors, and I'd like to present a perspective on climate justice from the Amazon rainforest, from a different farmers organizations, association, cooperatives, from buyers, European buyers, for cocoa, for coffee, for palm oil, and from financial sector. But first, I know that mostly we have presenters from universities, from US-based organization, and also government. But my organization is a bit different, and I think it will be interesting for you also to present this organization. So it's called CGR, as Marcus said, and this is the Consultative Group for International Agriculture Research. The headquarters is in Rome, and this is the largest publicly funded agriculture research organization worldwide. We are UN-affiliated organization, and we are financed, or let's say we're part of World Food Program, Food and Agriculture Organization, and International Fund for Agriculture Development. All of them Rome-based, and our headquarters is also based in Rome. As you can see, we have 60 years of experience, 3,000 partners, and they have like organization all over the world. Our main mission is to preserve the most substantial food, essential food of our planet, foods of our planet. So for example, in Lima, Peru, you have the International Center, in Lima, Peru, you have the International Potato Center, and there are like 4,000 potato varieties and seeds. In Mexico, you have the International Wheat and Maize Center. In Colombia and Cali, and actually I work for this organization, is the International Center for Tropical Agriculture. And all of this is like this, all over the presentation has changed. Okay, and all over the world there is like 15 centers. And even if you don't know the centers, maybe you know that in Norway, in the North Pole, there is this vault where the gene bank of our humanities, of all this like seed collection of most important food, are stored. Exactly. So you have like the rice, and all these seeds come from our centers. So we do agriculture research, but we have also these gene banks. Within this organization, so I work for this chapter that is called Alliance Biodiversity International and CIAT, Centro Internacional for Agricultura Tropical, or International Center for Tropical Agriculture, that is like the Americas office. It's in Cali, Colombia, where the COP for biodiversity was actually last year, and we work around this nexus of agriculture, nutrition, and environment. And again, the global largest collection on cassava, on beans, and forages in the world. And also just to show you briefly, so where the offices are, so the main office in the Americas is in Cali, Colombia. The main office of Africa is in Kenya, and there is also main office in Asia, so we are interconnected. Within this organization, you know that UN organizations are always multi-level, multi-actors. I work for a division called CGR Hub for Sustainable Finance, or Impact Sustainable Finance. What we do? We integrate science to accelerate investment in agriculture of financial institutions. And when I say financial institutions, this could be like private financial institutions, banks, of course, public banks, government, finance bank. It could be also impact investors, social lenders. So we help this institution to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, to achieve the Paris Agreement targets and the global biodiversity targets. Also, mostly in developing and emerging countries' markets. How we do this? So there are like 3 or 4 services or areas of work we have. From one side, we create this pipeline of investment-ready, bankable SMEs, smallholder farmers organization that can access credits from these financial institutions. How we do this? We do this through capacity building, through technical assistance. It's a lot of work that we invest so we can increase productivity and they can actually obtain this financial product, mostly credit. But we work also with financial institutions. We work with financial institutions because they need these more innovative financial products that are more gender-oriented, that are more climate-oriented, biodiversity-oriented, deforestation-free, for example, oriented. And we try to, or we help them to de-risk their investment through providing with information about, for example, productivity and yields in the future that is based on all this data and information we have from all the 15 centers I have shown you for the last 60 years, and we can do projections. There are different tools, and already there are a lot of banks all over the world, and you can see also some of them I just came back actually from Senegal, where we have worked also with local financial institutions, and we have provided this information, these tools. We have done also this capacity building, this technical assistance within a bank, one private bank and one also national bank of Senegal, so they can be more, they can have a more diversified offer of credit products, but they can also de-risk their operations. And why food production, climate change, and environmental degradation? We have talked all over the yesterday and today about these topics, but let me maybe focus this topic specifically on a sector such as agriculture. So agriculture has this massive impact on environment because agriculture uses enormous land also. Half of the world's habitable land is used actually for agriculture. Every agriculture is extractive, and of course every agriculture activity has a lot of also negative impact, unfortunately, on biodiversity, on land degradation, on flora, fauna, etc., etc. And of course it's a vicious cycle because agriculture has an impact on climate change, negative impact on climate change, but climate change also has a negative impact on agriculture activities, and mostly in these developing markets or emerging markets. So the importance of adaptation in agri-food sector is enormous. It's important, it's very important, and this is actually our work, the principal part of our work, to make all these agriculture activities more resilient and also to decrease the vulnerability of communities, agriculture communities, farmer communities in developing country, in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. And why, again, climate and finance? So there is enormous gap in climate finance for the food systems, and food systems, when I say food system, these are all the actors actually from farm to fork connected. So it's estimated that it's around 300 to 350 billion of US dollar to transform, it needs to transform the current land use system and to build more sustainable, more organic or more agroecological agriculture system and agriculture business model. There's insufficient finance that is dedicated actually to this transition, and there is only 1.7% of all the climate financing in 2020 has reached small-scale farmers. A total of 10 billion US dollar. Less than 3% of this climate finance, of course, it invested in agriculture and is invested in women-led businesses, in youth or indigenous communities that work with these natural resources. So from one side, we have the smallholder farmers, the SMEs that have this enormous need for financial resources, for credits. And from the other side, we have banking institutions that have this demand for financial instruments that are more climate oriented. I think it has been news for all of us, like 10 years ago, this was impossible even to think that now in big banking sector, big banking institutions, you have a climate analyst, chief analyst. So you have the financial analyst, but you have also people that work also with climate change topics, since this is also has enormous implication on financial sector. So knowing more about climate change means de-risking their operation. And let me now bring you to a completely different corner of the world. This is the Amazon rainforest, the biggest, largest tropical rainforest in the world. Covers about 40% of the entire South America. Of course, the majority of this percentage is in Brazil, almost 70%. Amazon rainforest is larger than the Congo rainforest, the Indonesian rainforest combined actually. And of course there is 9 countries around the Amazon basin. I work mostly in Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, and a little bit of Bolivia in the Amazon rainforest of this country. I'm senior manager, so I'm managing projects, but as Marco said, I'm also in charge of this sustainable agriculture business models. By the way, all the pictures you have seen, you'll see during the presentation, have been taken by our team in some of our project areas. And you can see me here. You can see also my son, whom I have been dragging since he was 3 years old to all my projects. Amazon rainforest is this mega biodiversity hotspots of the world. 1 of every 10 species of flora and fauna is in the Amazon rainforest. So, and it's one of the most diverse ecosystem in our world. Not only this, the Amazon rainforest is this carbon sponge. So the lungs of our planet. Unfortunately, you know that due to deforestation and this land use change, which is basically always deforestation, we have been losing every second hectares and hectares of Amazon rainforest. There's a lot of, we haven't talked actually today about carbon credits, but there's a big issue now in, with biodiversity carbon credits. Very difficult to design these projects, to do these dossiers of carbon credits. I have worked on this, and my point of view is I'm very critical about this, because I have seen that the monetary effect to farmers after carbon credit project is not, it's not so great. You just pay the investment, but they cannot conserve forest after this. We work also a lot with indigenous communities. Of course, there are 47 million people, and they are in the Amazon rainforest, and there are 2 million of indigenous communities. There's a lot of knowledge, ancestral knowledge. There's a lot of also desire for this community to spread this knowledge and to share this knowledge, medicinal and cosmetic and food and nutritional knowledge with the world. So we work with a lot of these farmers, indigenous communities on mostly on wild harvested, not on crops. We're trying also to promote this wild harvested, for example, superfruits. You see here like a product called aguaje. I don't know if you know, in Brazil it's called buriti. And this is a palm fruit from a palm tree that has 40% or 40 times more beta carotene than the carrots. So it has more vitamin A and vitamin E than the carrots. It's amazing. And this is a product which we have been promoting, and we have helped also this community to start accessing markets. And now you can see this aguaje even sold on Amazon and sold also in the European Union. We have worked with them a lot with topics like circular economy. There is a lot of byproduct also, and you know, sometimes, wow, 2 minutes, okay. So we have worked on actually EU sponsored project about circular economy. But the Amazon rainforest, it means also mega biodiversity hotspots. Of course, this is agriculture, also a very strong agriculture sector. And all this like coffee, cocoa, beef, soya, banana, fruits, they are dependent on natural resources, and they come also from these biodiversity-rich areas. Unfortunately, almost all of these products are coming like raw products. There is no value added, and this is this very, very strong dependency on natural products, natural resources. And all these countries are exporting cocoa beans, but nobody's exporting chocolate, for example. So always this value added is done in one of these like developed markets. So the agriculture sector is extremely important for income generation, for job generation, of course for food security and for life in general for these people. I know that when I say palm oil, for example, all of you think about this like big corporates, like maybe in Brazil or in Argentina, of course in Indonesia and Malaysia. But for example, in the country I work in, like Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, a little bit of Bolivia, palm oil sector, they're mostly like small-scale farmers. These people that have escaped actually another vicious circle of illegal coca growing. So they have like 1 hectare, 1.5 hectares of palm oil, and their carbon footprint is much less than each one of us living here in the US. Then very briefly, I know that we talk about the agriculture business model, but this is the business model in the Amazon rainforest. So you have one finca or one farm from one side, one finca from the other side, and you see just half a hectare of cocoa or of coffee or a little bit of palm oil, cassava, etc., etc. So very challenging infrastructure, very challenging access to market, very challenging also access to credits. Why? Because there is insufficient credit history, because there are currency and price volatility, because there is a lot of like problems within the country, unstable political, economical situation, and these are also barriers that are very challenging or especially challenging for financial sector. For financial sector, giving credits to this type of farmers is very risky because there is very low repayment, because there is very high transaction cost, and just it is risky because there is no long-term investment horizon for them. Very fast. So this is the infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure and transport, this is real pictures from the areas I work. Very big issue, deforestation, and I wanted to show this since we're talking about EU and there's this EUDR regulation. I work with farmers that need to, let's say, comply with the EUDR regulation, which is zero deforestation regulation, with these 7 commodities that are not allowed to enter the European Union if they come from deforested areas. Actually, this is regulation that has been directed to buyers, to big companies, but at the end of the day, these are small producers, these are SMEs and smallholder farmers that need to comply with this regulation. How we do this? We do georeferences, so you can see the plot. So you have to go to each one of these farmers and do these georeferences to them, and of course there's a very contradiction process for us because you have to go to their houses and you have to ask information about their plots, and this is something very private. And I have farmers that are just asking me who are these people from the European Union that ask me the plans of my farmers, of my farms. So is it right or wrong? And I wanted to show you at the end just a project that is visualizing actually this work, what we do between financial institution and SMEs. It was a project, Peru Hub, financed by USAID, unfortunately no more USAID, where we have brought together 21 SMEs of some like wild harvested products, but also some commodities, and we managed to do the first roadshow in the Amazon rainforest, bringing impact investors, social lenders, and some financial institutions. Big outreach, large outreach, and a lot of positive impact, reaching more than $1.5 million of credits. We have taught people through technical assistance, through capacity building, not only how to report, how to return this investment, but also how to report impact. So for me, this has been a great success, and I was very proud that through like agriculture research institution, we can bring these two new actors for the climate adaptation scene together. Thank you very much. And in the end, I would like to present a video, actually. The video will be in Spanish. I know that a lot of you speak Spanish, but then I can also translate some. We cannot hear it. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Jovita Ivanova, soy gerente senior para la Alianza Biodiversity Internacional y CIAT. CIAT es el Centro Internacional de Agricultura Tropical. Soy también la coordinadora por parte de CIAT del proyecto Perú Hub y como CIAT estamos encargados en la realización de este rueda de inversión que están viendo ahora. Hace 5 años, cuando empezamos a gestar este proyecto Perú Hub, junto con nuestros partners de Utah, de Purdue y también del líder de este proyecto, que es la Universidad Agraria, estábamos pensando por qué cortar la cadena de emprendimiento hasta mercado, por qué no ir un poquito más allá y ver cómo podemos asegurar también un financiamiento para este emprendimiento, para estas empresas. Así que allá surgió la idea de este rueda de inversión o un road show, este matchmaking que están haciendo ahora las empresas con inversionistas de impacto. Tenemos 11 inversionistas de impacto y social lenders que están ahora en Tarapoto en la manera presencial y virtual con nosotros, están atendiendo 21 empresas y qué bueno cuando los sueños se vuelven realidad. Estamos tratando de asegurar estos créditos tan necesitados para todas estas empresas y emprendimientos y esperamos que el próximo año podemos tener lo mismo espacio acá, pero ya con un oficial otorgamiento de crédito.
Thank you. I think that clip spoke for itself. Appreciate it. Thank you. So next we have Professor Marcy Washington, and do you want to show the clip first?
Let's go ahead and show
So we have another clip for you.
It's 15 minutes. Clip.
Maybe we sit.
Sure.
Yes. Just sit here by myself.
Miami, a tropical paradise with sandy beaches, vibrant nightlife. However, this city found itself at the forefront of the battle against climate change.
They identified Miami as the place that was most at risk from sea level rise in terms of the dollars of impact.
You know, we hear all the time these sensational stories about how Miami is going to be underwater in 30 years, in 50 years. Layered on top of that, you also have this long history of extreme racially uneven development throughout the South Florida region.
I did not think environmental or climate issues had anything to do with me. To me, climate issues had to do with this whitewashed version where we have to worry about going outside in the middle of the night with flashlights so turtles can find their way to the ocean.
Because of this history of structural violence, certain communities are given the short end of the stick, are seen as collateral damage. It's a socio-economic problem. A lot of people don't have the finances to contend with the issues that they're being faced with.
What does it mean to own a home where the roof is still not fixed from the last time a hurricane came through? That is a very different position to be in. As I started to kind of talk to people and learn from them and listen to them, that the whole framing did not take into account daily struggle.
With only an average of 6 feet above sea level and in the pathway of hurricanes, its geography is what makes the city so vulnerable. Issues brought on by climate change find themselves intersecting with the city's history and socioeconomic structures. Today,
community leaders, scientists, and scholars are trying to work together to find solutions, build hope, and secure the city's future.
Everglades she's a beautiful place. And a lot of people don't realize the historic Everglades was where Miami-Dade County is, where Miami is, where Broward County is. That's all a part of the original footprint of the Florida Everglades. Today, all you see are the skyscrapers, the buildings, the malls, the homes, the suburbs.
Florida's history is marked by millennia of cycles of rising above and sinking below sea levels. The current landscape is a remnant of the last ice age, a uniquely distinctive ecosystem that thrives with diverse wildlife, sawgrass, cypress forests, and most importantly, tree islands.
The tree island is a home to the wildlife. That's the importance of what these islands do, is they help wildlife flourish. You have to understand how the tree island came to existence. When much of Florida was under the ocean, even this area was a living coral reef. So when the waters receded, your reef started dying, but it left that skeleton of the coral reef. Over time, sediment started to settle on those dead coral ridges. And the sediment kept building up. Things started to grow on the islands. So over thousands and thousands of years, these islands formed. That's why the Everglades has a ridge and sluice system. The ridge is the coral heads, and then you go into the sluice, which is the space between the coral ridges. For us, all of this is sacred. It's not just one little island, one little tree, one little object. It's the sacredness of all of the area.
Individuals were already here. There's the misnomer around no one being here. The city of Miami is actually 1 year younger than the church that you're taping in. Macedonia is older than the city of Miami. This church was founded by Blacks in 1895, dates back to as early as 1882. The city of Miami was incorporated in 1896.
Due to its strategic location as a link between the Caribbean, North and South America, the city would get its start as a trading outpost, and it would attract traders and laborers, many of whom were Afro descendants from the southern United States and the Bahamas.
For someone coming from the Bahamas, the environment here in the Grove was very similar to what they were accustomed to back at home. Flagler was attracted to the area because of the growth in tourism, decided to bring the railroad down.
There was this awareness that, well, if you live in the north and you want to go to this place where there's sunshine and they have oranges and they have native and indigenous people we can trade with, but it had to be developed. The word was out that there were opportunities. They were telling their friends, letting people know, sending the word back that if you're looking for opportunity, come to Miami.
You now saw the migration of Blacks from the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, and North Florida. So you had an immigration of a group of people and a migration of another group of people that came together and were able to make a life and a livelihood for themselves and their families. From the standpoint of Coconut Grove, Blacks and whites worshiped together in the late 1800s. we started to separate as segregation became more prevalent.
Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church originally came from Union Chapel, an integrated church that was split in two. Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church for Black worshipers, and Plymouth Congregational Church for whites. This split would reflect how Miami would grow as a segregated city.
I'm a product of segregated schools. So from elementary school through middle school, I attended segregated schooling in Miami-Dade County. I'm of the generation where I still remember what it was like to have to sit in the balcony as a Black child while the white children sat on the first level of a theater or at a performance. I remember what it was like when the access in terms of leisure and the beach was only Virginia Key Beach.
Before Virginia Key Beach was designated the recreational space for people of color, there was no beach for people of color could go to. A wait-in happened in 1945 to fight for a space that they could recreate.
We were in Overtown, and they told me that whatever I decided that I wanted to do with the young people for the summer, that they trusted me to do so. It was very important to me that the young people know about the space in which they were in. One of the places that we went for a field trip was to visit the elders. I will never forget how shocked I was and how just mesmerized and just pulled in the young people were when almost every single one of the elders took out of their wallet this card that they used to have to use to go to the beach. They could get arrested if they didn't have this card going over to the beach. They said up until the 80s that they had to have this card to go to the beach, and that just stunned and floored the young people. We ended up going over to the Black Film Festival on the beat. It was a topic of conversation because they were like, we would have needed one of those cards here. We would have needed one of those cards there. And so just to be able to make history real.
We have a tendency to maybe water down. I was born here and I had no idea how racial violence and structural violence has been the foundation of this city.
The beach in general is one of the cheapest forms of entertainment that you can provide for your family. All you had to do is fill your tank up with gas if you had a car. You made the food at home and you could come and have a wonderful day out with your family. Being a native of South Florida, I learned that my great-grandmother and grandmother, I have pictures of them coming to historic Virginia Key Beach Park.
As the city grew, this culture of segregation and Jim Crow would play a crucial role in shaping its geography. A stark divide would emerge. The eastern region along the coast would become a tourist destination, also populated by white, affluent neighborhoods, while the workforce building the city, primarily communities of color, would be relegated to the west. Today, this geographical split remains evident in the city's landscape and would dictate how issues are addressed.
The concept of the spine of distress signals this kind of coastal ridge that runs parallel to the Atlantic region.
It's characterized by communities and neighborhoods where poverty levels are higher than anywhere else in the county. The housing isn't usually of the same quality. You don't have the same level of resources. Often insurance is lacking. and you're often marginalized politically.
Miami Gardens, Little Haiti, Liberty City, Overtown, Allapattah, West Grove, and Homestead are just some of the communities that can be found along this spine.
We want the environment to be treated with respect, and I know I want this environment to have an opportunity to heal and thrive. That's my advocacy, is about protecting this place, because this place needs to have a voice.
This city, with its fragile geography, is trying to look forward as the impacts of climate change continue to accelerate. Many residents whose roots run deep in this city, even through a history of disinvestment and environmental racism, are raising their voices while finding resilience within themselves. This sense of resiliency is what allowed them to look to the future with hope.
Hope is a discipline, right? It's not because we see it, it's because we know that if we work towards it, we can get there. And so we're being disciplined with that hope for us, for my ancestors, and for my nieces and nephews who I want them to have a better life, right?
Mic check, 1, 2. Mic check. Hello? Can you hear me? Yes. Sorry, there we go. Hello, everybody. I think it's projecting fine? Or is it just my voice generally projecting right now?
It's just your voice.
You hear me okay, just my voice?
No, it works.
Papa, you're not going to help me out?
No, it's on. It works.
I'm just messing with it, actually. So, hello, everybody, and I thank you for taking time to watching that 15-minute synopsis of a film that we have. It is actually longer, and we'll be showing it actually coming up again soon at the Coral Gables Art Cinema on March 18th, if you're interested in looking at it. It's called The Edge of Hope, and if you want further information from me, don't hesitate to let me send that to you. But maybe I should have greeted you first. So thank you once again for being here. But my name is Marcy Washington, as my colleague Dr. Teal brought forth, and as a daughter of the Gullah Geechee community, I bring you greetings as a person born and raised in Youngs Island, South Carolina. So for me, working on this project as one of the PIs on it, principal investigators on it, it meant for me to focus on the voices of this community. It meant focusing on those that live here in Miami. Yes, I may have a voice toward these issues regarding climate gentrification, disinvestment, but it was not about my experience. So a big part for us in the Commons for Justice project was, what does the community member say? What is the community elder saying? And what can we do to support that part? Support them. There's a clicker thing? Okay, that's what I call it, a thing, right? So with this project that we went into here, we understood that climate change, as you've heard ad nauseum today, that it is not distant at all for us, and especially here in Miami, where we're constantly dealing with environmental challenges, such as flooding, extreme heat, rising sea levels. And when you think about those issues, you need to consider the reality that many of these marginalized communities, for instance, do not even have cover when they're waiting for the bus when it comes to extreme heat. So we were wondering more about that. We wanted to know more than just looking at statistics. Every community for us was not just a stat, but we wanted to understand beyond just the stats. We wanted to say, what is going on? What are the social vulnerabilities that you're contending with? What are the political vulnerabilities that you're contending with? And how can we help? So what we understood to be the case is that these communities in your own back door, in which we are dependent upon here in Miami, at FIU, and in many other locations. These communities, as you are understanding, you might be a part of them as well, and I acknowledge that and I respect that for those who are here, by the way, is that you're contending with these economic inequalities, but not just because of the climate change that is pushing you out of your community, but you're also being challenged with issues of safety and actually health issues as well. When you see the larger film, we go further into these inequalities when it comes to health. But also what we found is that many of these communities are not getting the same level of access to resources to contend with this increasing level of climate change and environmental denigration. So we said that this is enough to look at this double effect. This is what we call a double effect of resilience. On one hand, we are saying, you are resilient. You are pushing through the disasters. You are surviving. A hurricane came through and you're still here. Yeah, no, right? We said that's one side of the argument. And the other side of it too is we would say, yes, the government is providing you with more opportunities, with new policies to support your efforts. Good job. But we're ignoring the issue regarding the structural and the political and the cultural denigration that has limited these populations to always have to survive. Always have to survive, not just because of climate change, but because of the choices that we make as policymakers, as government leaders, and also even through our own research. So we were saying enough of this double effect, this slow violence has to be moved. And we needed to understand how we could be a part of that conversation. So with the Commons for Justice project, we said we wanted to build a community campus collaboratory. A community, and maybe I need to change this, right? A community campus collaboratory. And to build that community campus collaboratory where we are co-identifying, we are actually promoting solutions collaboratively. We said that we needed to promote this through connecting with the audience here again. So for this start of this grant that was funded by Mellon and actually led by the Extreme Events Institute here at FIU, this multi-year project, we said we're going to work with these communities that you see listed above you. We wanted to have as much broad representation as possible to get there. But furthermore, we needed to also understand something. If you're reading that quote up there, we needed to understand that a lot of the communities simply did not have any trust in our academic institutions and in our political institutions because of their previous experiences of extractive behavior that we engage in. So we had to acknowledge that. And we had to say, can we just still sit with you? But we needed to engage in active listening. A lot of my students that are here, I know you hear it ad nauseum, but active listening was a big part of it. Not just reflective listening, but actively listening to what the community wanted, not what we wanted as researchers. And for them, they wanted to put the message out there that we are here. And our community are constantly being reshaped because of the choices of politicians, because of the choices of this slow violence that climate change is infecting us with. So they said that we needed to promote intentional trust building. To promote intentional trust building, for instance, on that line you see at the bottom, that was particularly through our research. We constantly went back and forth through a loop of checking in with the community members on our findings. It wasn't just what we wanted to say, but we said, this is what we hear you saying, is this accurate? And could you also be a part of the research team? Did you hear that part? Be a part of the research team. And let's walk together, lockstep and barrel. And if you don't agree, and if we don't agree, let's just work it out. And we did that not just through our research, but we also did that through our various efforts, such as our solution sessions, where we brought our communities together, we brought our faculty together, but not only did we have our faculty and our community members and our community organizations, but we had many of you that are sitting in here. We had students. We needed students at the table because not only did it mean that we understood the today, but we wanted to make sure you had a voice on the future, as well as knowing that you don't have next, but you have now. So a lot of our efforts we promoted was through oral history. We wanted to know the oral history and also just simply what you want to tell us. The community wanted to promote more art exhibitions. They want to integrate music because they're saying this is our culture. This is what we want to put out, not just language when it comes to research. We also put out various efforts, what we call, for instance, the history exchanges, where we had communities come together and actually interact with each other about their histories. Why was that important? It was important because many of these communities actually have got engaged in a crabs in a barrel kind of behavior that the policymakers actually appreciated, because when these communities weren't working together, they were all fighting each other for this small pool of money, right? So for us, we said we wanted to work together with more intentionality, and they, I think, appreciated that even till to this point, where the grant is over, but they said, Marcy, can we still just meet with each other to keep open dialogue going? So that was a beautiful effort for us. Now, with these oral history and these art exhibitions and the podcasts that were totally led by our students, podcasts were even part of the conversation. They wanted a podcast. From even our symposium that you saw a little piece of there, they were guided by our community organization. All this information, by the way, was not just static. It's not just for that moment. It's actually, and the young lady I see back there, she was actually at one of our symposiums as well. Thank you for being here. We also put all this information in the FIU library digital archive. Why was that important? A lot of the community said to us, Marcy, a lot of our interviews, a lot of our pictures are being extracted, but we don't even know where they are. So for us, it meant we needed to put them in an open platform where anybody can access it, for not just now, but also for the future. Why? And I'm going to just end it here. Why? Is because they felt that they said too many individuals are coming in to reshape Miami, and they're forgetting who is here already, who's already been here. So for us, we wanted to not only say what we're seeing moving toward and the increasing amount of redevelopment through capitalism, but we wanted to say, remember, this community is actually called whatever it was at that moment before. Whatever that name was, recognize it and give honor to it. So if I could just end on this last 1 minute of things, and I wrote it up, but I didn't even follow anything I wrote, by the way, it's interesting, is that our collaboratory also was, last but not least, and I'll end it of this past couple minutes, is that this was an interdisciplinary collaboration. Our collaboration not only included community members, students, but we included various faculty members from not just the social sciences. We included faculty also from the humanities, the histories and the arts. We included faculty that was also in environmental studies. Everyone needed to be at the table as much as possible. We were limited, I'll acknowledge, in respect to the actual practitioners in Miami, but we got them there eventually. But we wish we had them from the very beginning. So for this grant in itself, I'll just say that, in conclusion, that the Common for Justice initiative that was led, as I said earlier, by the Extreme Events Institute, this multi-year project that was funded by Mellon, this project demonstrated how universities, us, can play a key role in actually addressing the environmental and social challenges to encourage hope through interdependence by centering the voice of the communities. That was what we really set out to do and what we learned along the way. And initially we were saying, we want everybody together, but we didn't realize how much it was going to change. Because the definition of what we put forth regarding resilience actually was not the definition in the end. So we say we want to challenge this slow violence in this absurd geography by centering the voice of the community. And we hope to actually have more of these kind of efforts in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Washington. And last but not least, we have Secretary Osceola reporting from his perspective about localized climate action and I guess climate protection. But before we do that, just a little note that we're running a little bit late. This we will probably extend 10 to 15 minutes. We started 10 minutes late, so please remain here, right? And don't rush out, just before 15. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, we're probably a little late because of me, but I think that's all right. I'm here, right? I made it. I just want to go ahead and say Shanab B'Shat to all of you folks for spending time to actually come out and listen, because in our experience, that's been a big issue, is people just not wanting to listen. So for me, this gives me reason to be not so pessimistic, just being here in this space with you guys. So we're on a good track right here. So as you can see the title, Can Culture-Centric Communities Contextualize Climate Change? Anybody's a fan of alliteration, I got you. Short answer, yes, we can. But let me go ahead and give you guys a little bit more context for that, right? It's not that simple. Nothing ever is. I'm from the Miccosukee tribe. Just a heads up, there is a little bit of a formatting issue here. I do want to put a notice out there. Futura and Helvetica are the best fonts ever created, but not every computer has them, so you're going to see some slight issues, but I know the information, so don't worry about it. Just look at me instead of the screen. But up there you see our forefathers, and I say forefathers, but it's not that long ago. This was back in the 1960s, or actually 1950s. This is when they were establishing the tribe. But even though our federal government was established in 1962, we've been around in Florida since time immemorial. This is a little context for how we adapted though once we got down to the Everglades and Big Cypress. And as you can see, we learned to live off the land, learned to live with the land. You can see some of our ancestors there wrestling alligators, a woman there making bread out of kunti plant, people riding canoes, building canoes, just living out there. What gives us our identity as indigenous people is our connection to the land. It's what unifies us in our belief system and how we live. And there's a delicate dance out there to balance with the ecosystem. In fact, we would often move from the Big Cypress or the Everglades based off wet or dry season. A little bit more context for how we kind of integrate the culture. Well, you guys are looking up there. That's actually a picture of our ceremonial grounds, corn dance, Osceola. That's where I'm going to be at the end of May, engaging in our ceremonies that we've had for centuries, before there was an America. So for us, it's important that these things don't go away, but we've seen these things come under attack by climate change and other man-made factors infecting the land. But what does that land provide us? Again, you see there, those are chickees, and those are camps arranged by clans. We get our clans, it's an identity, a cultural connector from the land. I'm Bird Clan. We have Panther Clan, Otter Clan, Wind Clan, Big Town, Wajali Clan. We all gather at corn dance. We all engage in traditional ceremonies using medicine off the land. And we don't even plan corn dance until our medicine men look at the stars and read the moons, look at the cycles, and determine based off of the night sky, which is why you see that little weekly world news thing, bad medicine men plan to blow up the moon. I made that for our community. We like to have fun. But that's just an indicator of how important that is to us. As soon as I put that up there, everybody got it. If we look at the corner, some Seminoles weren't so happy that it says Seminole plans to blow up the moon. Some Seminole bad medicine. You like that fun, right? Besides, this is FIU, not FSU, so go Panthers. I was just up at FSU, so I don't have anything too much against them. I like to work with whoever wants to work with us. That's why I'm here with you folks. But anyway, as you can see, our culture comes from the land. It's still deeply connected. I'm here in front of you. If you guys look at my arm, you actually see scratch marks from part of the culture, some ceremonies we still engage with. So we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. It's not an easy path to walk though. And that's why I want to show you guys a little bit of what we see up there. So what you're looking up there is on the far left, the effects of drought season, which has been exacerbated by climate change. And on the right, you see one of our camps along the highway, which we are trying to secure. That is the Tiger Tail Camp, which is in danger of flooding, as well as some other camps and just our community in general. We're not the only indigenous community that's going to be impacted by climate change and sea level rise, but that's something you folks should be aware of. It's going to be indigenous communities that are impacted first, because we're often on the fringes, on the outskirts of society and policies, so we feel these impacts first. And we have the context for the land of what's changed. We've been out here hundreds of years. You know, even though we used to live more permanently up in Tallahassee, we did trade, range out here. There were families that did live out here. I mentioned our medicine. We have certain plants that if that plant is on the land, that means we belong on that land. And some of these plants only exist because of the ecosystem, the balance that we have there. So when those plants are gone because of the ecosystem degradation, that means we don't have a place. That means our culture, our belief system is gone. We have no path forward. So that's something we look at. This is an existential crisis as well as a climate crisis. Our very being is at stake here. I'm sure some of you folks, I hope, are aware of this phrase, water is life. That's something that came about during the Standing Rock protests not that long ago. Even though those were tribes out in the Dakotas, a lot of other tribes went out there because they saw common cause. Here was a group fighting against exploitation, resource extraction, water degradation, as well as land degradation, as well as a complete disregard for sovereign rights, which I'll get into in a little bit. But a lot of tribes were able to come together and fight because we saw this was the same fight we've all been fighting for. And it's a simple fact of the matter that water is life. On this planet, if you don't have water, you don't have life. In the solar system, there are planets without water, those are dead planets. So science backs up what the culture says. And it's because of that the tribe has a sustainable resources department, because we recognize that we can't just go off of what we've seen and what our elders have told us. No, in this country, you have to have data, because things get settled in courtrooms or in legislative bodies. So we have the Sustainable Resources Department. Under the Sustainable Resources Department, we have our water resources, land resources, and our fish and wildlife. They've been doing studies out in the Everglades for decades now. They oversee our land. We have community members that work within those departments. We even have kids that go intern there. They work with our students pretty much monthly. They have something planned with the students to get them on the same page as those of us in government, which is something I find very different from our government and our community versus how I see government and community out here. You guys are often left out of the conversations about what's actually going on. I mean, a lot of people don't even realize you shouldn't be eating more than one fish from the Everglades a month because of the pollution levels. But you see people out there all the time. I'm sure you folks know people who go out there to fish all the time. That's an information gap. Maybe that's by design, because if you knew what's going on, you might actually get up and do something about it. That's why I'm here with you folks, because we have been trying to do something about it. I mentioned our water resources, land resources, fish and wildlife. They do a water study and Everglades study. That's a spring study and a fall study. Our land's off of I-75 and between Tamiami Trail and I-75. They go out there, each study gets a week where they just collect water samples throughout the land. And our middle school students and our high school students each get a day reserved where they'll go out there with the scientists and collect data samples themselves. They work in conjunction with our Everglades Advisory Committee, which is made up of some elders in the community who have context for how the land is. They work with the scientists, so we have modern and traditional perspectives being represented here. Now, this water study we've been doing for decades. We use this data when we go to the state or federal governments to make a case for why the standards they have in place are just not sufficient. We have seen how things were out there. There was a time in the Everglades you could just drink the water if you were thirsty. You can't do that now. You can't even really swim out there without putting yourself at risk. You know, you might come up, feel some burning sensation on your skin. That's happened. You see deers out there with random growths, alligators with shriveled tails or legs. That indicates that the land, the water is not well, especially since the alligator is the apex predator. They're a good determination of how your ecosystem is in this setting. And again, we've seen it through observation, but we have the data to back it up. And up here, I'm not going to go through all of it, that's a quick summary of different legal battles the tribe has gone through to back up what we know. We don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. And our first chairman, Buffalo Tiger, had said our battles are no longer in the fields with guns and tomahawks, it's in the courtrooms with lawyers. So you see evidence of that. Once we had the data, once we had the resources to fight, we did fight. We took on the APA, South Florida Water Management District, state, federal, local, doesn't matter. The land and the water quality is what matters. And you can see again up there, just nice evidence of all of those different actions. In fact, the tribe has often, I can give you an example where we disagree with the state. For phosphorus levels in the water, we worked hard to establish 10 parts per billion. The government was willing to accept more phosphorus in the water. Our standard is nature's, so that's what we followed. We sued the EPA and whatnot, and we were able to get that established. We fought for higher standards for the water quality. That is just one area where you might not be aware of how the tribe has already looked out for folks in Florida, because we recognize this land is just not our land, it's also the land you live on, and we have to keep this fight going until you guys are ready to join us. But we get whatever progress we can get done while we can get it done. Why does the indigenous perspective matter? I mean, I hope I kind of give you guys context already, but let me get into it a little bit more. Well, history tells us that indigenous people have a big impact on the environment. They've done studies that after first contact and the tens of millions of indigenous people living in this land died, that had an impact on the climate. Places like the Amazon had vast farmlands and civilizations that were depleted, and once those civilizations were gone, you saw the rainforest grow in, so you're going to see an increase in CO2 and things like that. So the right there, you see a picture that is a block of ice that they were actually able to read the CO2 levels in, and it correlated with Columbus's contact with the indigenous people and the impact on the climate worldwide. So indigenous people have already had an impact on climate, and our presence or lack of presence in the conversation has a meaningful impact. I didn't mean to do that. Oh, also, I should also mention, it's important that you folks hold your leaders to standards. When they make a mistake, make sure they own up to it. As you can see, I accidentally messed up on perspective up there. I just caught that now. Whoops. But this is what it looks like when leadership makes a mistake. They own up to it, right? It's important that you folks understand, though, what type of impact leadership and their policies are having on the world. You're seeing various communities up there that are being impacted, mostly by man-made issues, right? And when I say man-made, climate change is, I don't want to say end of the line because that sounds very fatalistic, but at the equation, it's towards the end. But what's at the beginning? It's exploitation and resource extraction. And that's what you're seeing with these individuals up there, specifically folks in the Amazon. Their resource, and the Maori, their resources are being extracted from the land. There aren't best use practices put in place. And as a result, everything is going out of balance. And you see people in the Arctic are suffering from that. Arctic cultures that rely on the permafrost, their cultures are being depleted, degraded, destroyed. It's that simple. If you look at the bottom right there, that is actually Osceola Pool Camp. That is my family's camp. Now, it is suffering from flooding due to climate change and water management issues. We were trying to work with the government to get that camp put into our control and then have the camp raised. We actually got bipartisan support in Florida. Democrats and Republicans were willing to work with us. Unanimous support in Congress. Unfortunately, it was vetoed in December by the president. For political retribution, I'll be quite open with you folks, and that's something the tribe faces a lot in this state for doing the right thing, is political retribution. That's why I'm so thankful to be invited here, because we have been uninvited from events because of taking the right stand. And it's not just us trying to do whatever the wind is telling us. This is based off of our government as well. I'll get into that in just a second. But I mentioned government. Native nations, indigenous nations have been sovereign since time immemorial. In this country, treaties are the law of the land. If you look in the Constitution, I believe it's Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 that enumerates how treaties can basically be engaged with native nations. None of those treaties or those sovereign rights have been respected. So if you don't respect the people, you gotta at least respect the law. Otherwise, why do we have this government? It's a nation of laws, right, that we have to follow based off the Constitution. So for us, it's not just a cultural and spiritual duty, it's a civic duty. We're trying to hold this country to the standards that it says it has. And quite honestly, you can find that attitude throughout the world. I'm sure a lot of other countries have mechanisms for indigenous people to engage with that they don't fulfill, or recognize that they would have to have a higher standard so they don't engage with those people at all. Either way, we need to respect the indigenous people's rights wherever you are. And I want to remind you folks, you guys, your ancestors were all indigenous at some point. You guys were all around a fire at some point doing medicine with some crazy guy doing drugs, telling you stories, and this is how the world works. Little less drugs these days, but it's still similar to that. They tell us how the world works. We still have medicine men. You guys have that connection to the land, but it's been so far removed that you can't even recognize it now. But I beseech you guys, find that connection. Go out to the land, see how you feel out there. That land is your land too. ITEC, painting with all the colors of the wind. I'm gonna kind of speed it up here a little bit. So ITEC is Indigenous Traditional Ecological Knowledge. It's basically just a way for the government to actually work with tribes to integrate their experience in the context they have and their practices in the land into policy. Now there's some examples up there. Since I'm a little bit short on time, I won't go too much into it, but I will give an example that the tribe has a hand in with controlled burns. Controlled burns have been a part of our culture. It helps revitalize the soil so that way you can get new crops in, plus it clears out the brush, things accumulate. Now, since man has more control over the land, there's more brush and things like that put there by man. When you don't do controlled burns, you're creating basically a lot of kindling. And climate change exacerbates the situations. It makes conditions harder for controlled burns. So you're gonna have crazier wildfires out there. It's important that we address climate change, or at least in the meantime, try to have some mitigation techniques by having controlled burns. We have seen funding for that type of stuff go down this year. The tribe was trying to do controlled burns earlier, we had to find mechanisms. We actually have our policies now. We decided to take it on ourselves. But this is an important part of how you integrate traditional ecological knowledge from indigenous people. There's also co-stewardship. I think it's better than codependency on things like fossil fuels. We recently got co-stewardship agreements with the Everglades National Park and Biscayne Park. Now the tribe has a voice in how things go out there. We can influence policy. In the past, even though the government's supposed to consult with the tribes, the way consultation worked with matters to do with Everglades and Big Cypress, they'll send us a letter on the last day of the deadline and say, oh, we consulted with the tribe. No, they checked off a box, barely. So now we can have meaningful co-stewardship, we can have meaningful consultation. And if you look up there, the Miccosukee Constitution there's a little bit that says that we have to conserve our land and resources for future generations. Only other constitution I know in the world that has to do with the environment is Bolivia's, but I think that has a big impact on how your government goes forward and what they're trying to get done. Here, since we don't have that in America's Constitution, that's why you see a lot of people just trying to take, not really thinking ahead about what they're leaving behind or the state of the world they're leaving behind. In Miccosukee culture, I was raised to believe that I don't own this. Wait, don't tell the government that. As far as I know, we own this. I don't own this. I'm borrowing it from the future. So we owe it better to the next generation than how we got it. It's that simple for us. We have to think 7 generations ahead. It's not just for us today, it's for everybody tomorrow. If we want it tomorrow, we have to act like it. Also, if you really want to find ways to help the land, I would suggest lobby your government for land back. We went back to the tribes. We had a pretty good handle on it for centuries before the government came in and decided we know better. We can't have dominion over the land. I'd like to make this point that man in the tallest tower with the nicest suit is going to end up in the same place as me, 6 feet under one day, food for the worms. There will be other people here after us. We have to leave them something better than what we got. Thank you.